Our top story this hour: Iran's nuclear talks with world powers resumed in Vienna, but chances of a return to the 2015 deal through diplomacy are fading away. Now, an Iranian military official has warned that the West of paying a heavy price after reports claim that US and Israel are set to hold military drills to prepare for possible strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. A Twitter handle affiliated with Iran's top security body tweeted, I'm quoting here, providing conditions for military commanders to test Iranian missiles with real targets will cost the aggressors a heavy price. Israel and US have discussed the destruction of Iran's nuclear sites in case the talks fail. Israel's defense minister Benny Gantz says he has introduced Israeli defense forces to prepare to strike Iran, and Gantz also shared a timeline for when such an attack might take place with his US counterparts. Western powers are losing patience as Vienna talks have failed to break the deadlock. Meanwhile, Israeli defense minister says that his country will do everything to ensure that Iran would not be able to produce a nuclear weapon. However, Iran has denied ambitions of acquiring such a nuclear weapon. The statement is in the backdrop of a meeting between the United States and the Western counterparts. It discussed the 2015 nuclear deal and the way forward, and was held on the eve of the G7 foreign ministers meeting. Germany, France, the United Kingdom were part of this meet. Western officials feel there is little time left before the 2015 nuclear deal is damaged beyond repair. West has accused Iran of playing for time while advancing its nuclear program. Now, Germany's foreign ministers warned that time was running out for the nuclear deal revival. These are the 7th round of talks between Iran and the West. Iran had agreed to continue talks from where they left off in June, but Tehran has maintained its hardline stance. The chair of the negotiations called it a difficult endeavor. The 2015 nuclear deal was abandoned by Donald Trump in 2018. Sanctions levied on Iran by US, European Union and the United Nations. Iran limited its nuclear program in return for relief from these sanctions and wants checks and measures in case the United States decides to withdraw from the deal again.
A fun night out instantly interrupted. This is the aftermath of a shooting spree in the center of Tel Aviv. A gunman went on a rampage at Dizengoff Street. It's an area normally bustling with partygoers, but when shots rang out, chaos ensued.
You can see right behind us a restaurant. Families and friends were sitting, having supper and drinks, and all of a sudden the terrorists came over and shot them.
Authorities say more than 1,000 Israeli security forces were deployed in Tel Aviv. They were already on high alert in recent weeks, following a wave of deadly violence. While the attackers' motives are not clear, Israel said the shooter was a Palestinian man from the West Bank. After fleeing the scene, they said the assailant hid near a mosque in Jaffa, where Israeli forces found him after a manhunt that went on for hours. The attacker was killed during an exchange of fire, and it's not known if he was acting alone or if he had accomplices. Israel's Prime Minister Naftali Bennett vowed that all those involved in the attack would pay a price.
All right, back now with an update to that tragic shooting out of Sacramento this weekend. Police now saying they believe it was gang-related as new details come to light about the alleged shooters, including one released early from a 10-year prison sentence. Steve Patterson has more.
Tonight, police saying gang violence is at the root of Sunday morning shooting that left 6 dead and 12 others injured in Sacramento. In a statement today, authorities saying evidence shows at least 5 shooters fired guns during the altercation, which they believe took place between at least 2 groups of men.
I have some very serious questions about why the alleged perpetrators, and it is an allegation, were out on the streets.
Now, Sacramento police saying it's, quote, increasingly clear that gang violence is at the center of this.
Joining me now in the studio is former RAF pilot and now advisor at Universal Defence and Security Solutions, Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell. Sean, good to see you again. So let's just have a look at the map that we're now becoming so familiar with. We've seen that the battle for Kiev appears to be over. We've seen that the Russian troops pulling back. What of what they've left behind?
Yes, they've clearly withdrawn, and they've had a bit of a bloody nose there. And as they've withdrawn, obviously, press and everybody is able to get in and see some of the carnage at Bucha. I think the horrific scenes we're seeing piped into our living room are really just a clear impression of what war is like. Wars are brutal, and wars of national survival, which the Ukraine is currently involved in, are particularly brutal. We haven't seen this sort of thing since the Second World War. The veterans of the Second World War, there are few still alive. It's a great privilege to meet some of them on a regular basis. Most of them will not even talk about what happens in these wars because the images are so graphic and horrendous. One who did talk very eloquently was Harry Billing, who was involved in D-Day, and who described very graphically how the sea was running red with the blood of his colleagues. Tragically, he passed away this past week, and apparently in his final few words were, "Love one another." What a poignant reflection from an amazing man.
Absolutely. So back to this conflict, and of course, the Russians moving away from Kiev, but they do appear to be regrouping. What are you going to expect to see in the coming weeks and days, do you think, in this particular area to the east?
Well, it's a consistent question, isn't it? Where are Putin's ambitions now? It looks like his initial plan to take the whole of Ukraine has failed, but what is his plan B?
What exactly happened here in Bucha, a few miles from the capital, Kyiv? Ukrainian forces carefully picked their way through the wreckage as the Russians left and regrouped to the east. Is this evidence that could amount to war crimes? Several bodies litter the street. Civilians, apparently military targets, left where they fell, who knows how long ago.
The cities that have been liberated are scenes from horror movies, post-apocalyptic scenes. Among the victims of the Russian crimes are raped women who they tried to burn, murdered government officials, murdered children, murdered elderly, murdered men, many of whom have their hands tied with traces of torture and shot in the back of the heads.
We believe that Russian forces have committed war crimes, and we've been working to document that, to provide the information that we have to the relevant institutions and organizations that will put all of this together.
The Russian Defense Ministry denies claims of mass murder of civilians here in Bucha, which makes images like this even more important, shared widely yesterday by a local community group. Any war crimes investigation will want to look at them very carefully. Also, what could be evidence of a mass grave. Survivors struggle to make sense of what they've just escaped.
The prospect of nuclear conflict, once unthinkable, is now back within the realm of possibility.
A single modern nuclear weapon hitting in a major American city would be many times worse than the Hiroshima or Nagasaki. It would be a historic destruction of unbelievable proportions.
69% of Americans surveyed said they are worried the invasion of Ukraine could lead to nuclear war, and they fear that we could be at the beginning stages of World War III. But the Biden administration is assuring Americans the threat isn't critical.
We are assessing President Putin's directive, and at this time we see no reason to change our own alert levels.
Even before the invasion of Ukraine, over the past few years, the norms and the agreements that kind of put guardrails on nuclear weapons have really eroded.
It's a weapon that's not designed to kill soldiers. It's designed to destroy cities or take out critical infrastructure.
If you are an activist that cares about climate change or reproductive health care or government spending, you should care about nuclear weapons.
As long as these weapons are around, the possibility will always be there that they will actually use.
So while a nuclear attack is very unlikely, here's how it would hypothetically look and how the US could respond. Researchers estimate that there are approximately 12,700 nuclear weapons around the world, spread across 9 different countries: the United States, Russia, France, China, the United Kingdom, Pakistan, India, Israel, and North Korea. The US and Russia hold the majority. As of 2022, the US has more than 5,400 nuclear weapons, while Russia has close to 6,000.
The total explosive power of all the nuclear weapons today is so large that if you took a Hiroshima bomb and dropped it every 2 hours, 12 times a day, every day, starting in 1945 on August 6th, up till today, you still couldn't use up our current arsenal in terms of its explosive power.